Hello, everyone. I'm Tanya Rivero. Welcome back to CBSN. A new report from the U.S. Department of Agriculture finds child food insecurity is on the rise. Around 7.6% of American households with children, or nearly 3 million families, were sometimes unable to get enough food. This is an increase compared to 2019. Joining me now is Emily Engelhard. She's the Managing Director of Research at Feeding America. Emily, welcome. Great to have you with us. So what are the main takeaways from this report, and how challenging was last year for some families?
So I think there's really two key takeaways. There's good news, which is that we didn't see food insecurity spike at the rate that I think a lot of folks were anticipating. Given what we saw in 2020 with lines stretching for miles to get to food banks and food pantries, job losses, unemployment growing, kids not being able to go to school. We were all anticipating that we were going to see some real spikes in food insecurity. But this really does provide us with evidence that the huge government and charitable response worked. Now, the bad news is that for some populations, and these are the populations that are historically vulnerable and marginalized, food insecurity did get worse. So for Black individuals, we're seeing 1 in 4 individuals who are food insecure. For Latinos, 1 in 5, and for children, as you mentioned, 1 in 6. So even though the circumstances have improved overall, for children and other populations, it really hasn't.
And so to dive in a little bit more to that point, the report, found food insecurity was especially a problem for Black and Hispanic households in mostly metropolitan and rural areas. Is there any sense of what these trends tell you? Like, why did that specifically happen in those areas?
Well, there were two major sort of drivers when we were doing our work around food insecurity over the past 2 years. And the first is really food insecurity continues to be the most problematic for the people and for the geographies that have always had the highest rates of food insecurity. The other is that we really did see job loss in industries and occupations that are disproportionately filled by people of color, and also in rural areas. So it really demonstrates a larger systemic issue. Food insecurity was high for these populations before the pandemic, and it was only exacerbated by the circumstances last year.
That makes sense. Now, as the Delta variant is surging and the economy is still not fully recovered, what are you seeing now, currently, in terms of food insecurity?
So the food banks are doing everything they can to continue to meet the need. We put out an estimate last week that actually in 2020, we fed 60 million individuals, and that was a 50% increase over 2019. Now, while those numbers have come down and things are stabilizing, the food banks are preparing for, what might be another surge based on the Delta variant. And as everyone is aware, there's also been a suite of natural disasters, and our food banks really are first in line to help support in those situations.
Amy Engelhard, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.